When I was a kid, looking in the garage at my dad's 916 was pretty much the main reason I got into bikes. And now, over 20 years later, I've finally got to ride its bigger brother. This is the 996R. So, what is it? Well, the 996R is actually Ducati's first 998cc. They stole a bod from Ferrari F1 and they built the engine. It's the first Testastretta. It's got a narrower head, it's got a different camshaft, titanium con rods, short stroke, wider bore, and as standard it comes with those beautiful carbon Termi pipes. And then you've got Olin suspension, you've got Brembo brakes, it's got carbon bodywork that's actually revised and a bit more aerodynamic than a standard one. It really is just a special machine, and to be able to ride it is probably the best day in the office that anyone could ever ask for. Like, I'm not a big fan of nostalgia and like old bikes and all that sort of stuff, but this thing to me is the pinnacle. This is the most iconic bike in the world in my eyes. So this example is a really nice, it's been really looked after. Just a disclaimer, it is on new Supercoursers and it's got new pads in, so it is pretty much standard, but it's got a few little bits and bobs that aren't from the dark ages. I've got to say, like, it still looks amazing. Like the beautiful red paint scheme, the silhouette, the underseat pipes, just everything about it is so short and aggressive. I've got a VT race bike and you sort of sit on it and like higher up. This, you like sit in and it feels so, I'm only 5'7", it feels so compact. It's so small, it feels almost like a 252 stroke, like the bars are quite narrow, the pegs are high. It doesn't feel like a modern superbike, it just feels, it's got that sort of like the retros, you know, like you used to have your bars in there, nowadays we have them all out there because you want to get your elbow down, it's like that sort of thing. There's a few little quirks to these things, so obviously you hear all the Ducati rumours and stuff over the years, and even though this is an absolutely lovely example, my God, getting the thing to start is just hell. So it took me about 15 minutes and some assistance, even with the choke. It's got a little throttle idle switch. It wasn't even cold out, and yeah, it takes a while to get it going. Once it's going and it's hot, it's a lot better. Like, it's worth remembering that these are old bikes. Like, it's got no aids, it's got no wire-by-wire throttles, it's got no TFT dash, all that sort of stuff. Like, but the dash, it's got everything you need. It's got your RPM, it's got your temp, it's got your speed, it's got adjustable levers. And I think the first thing that got me, besides how different the riding position was, is just how heavy the clutch is. And it's no beautiful soft sort of like 1-2-5 clutch that you can just throw out. It's like a proper 4-finger grab and let it go. But once it gets going, the fueling and the bottom end and the throttle response, I would almost put a lot of modern bikes to shame, especially like the early Euro 4, Euro 5 bikes. Some of them, like the first twist, just as you come off the throttle onto on the throttle. This felt, I was so much better than I was expecting. Like, just pottering around like villages and slow speeds in traffic. Honestly, I couldn't get over how nice it was. But if you're going to get a 996, and especially a 996R, the homologation racing special, you ain't going to be buggering about in towns and villages. And that is exactly where this thing came into its own. When it hits the open road, oh my God. So starting with the engine, only makes 135 horsepower and 106 newton meters of torque when it was new, so I don't know what it makes now. But even so, it never feels underwhelming. Like, I was a bit worried that, like, being fortunate enough to test out so many bikes and ride so many modern bikes, I was worried that it would just feel like a bit of a pussycat, and it never did. Like, the way it delivers its power is so exciting, and even though it's a twin, you don't feel like you're running out of revs. It just keeps on going, and the gearbox is lovely. It feels exciting, and the soundtrack you get is just to die for. Like, it almost makes you want to chuck your earplugs out and let someone else ride it so you can follow them. And to be honest, that wasn't even the best part about it. The best part is the handling. I cannot get over how a bike of this age can feel that good. I know it's got your Brembo brakes, I know it's got your Olin suspension, but the way it turns into corners and the way it changes direction is stunning. Saying that, it definitely is not the most stable thing I have ever ridden in my life. In fact, it's probably one of the least stable things I've ever ridden in my life, especially when it gets a bit windy and you get hit in the bumps. It does get a little bit of a twitch on, and it doesn't particularly like big, fast, bumpy corners. But you can't, you know what, you can't have everything, can you? So, in its heyday, it might have only been 135 horsepower and 106 Newton meter torque it made. But my God, just the way it delivers it and the way it makes you feel, it's really difficult to describe, because it doesn't sound like a lot compared to your Panigale R's now that are making in excess of 200. This still feels fast. It feels almost like a quicker 600, so maybe like closer to like your Gixxer 750 type power. But the way it makes the power is genuinely thrilling, and that's something that I wasn't sure I'd say. Surely it'd be different if you took it to Silverstone and you'd quickly run out of depth there. When you get down the power and you crack that footer open, the V-twin is just beautiful how it delivers the power, and it just fires up the rev range. Even though on a lot of twins you'll find that you hit the red line pretty hard, I feel like this thing seems to rev like really freely and nicely. It just eats up roads, and I really wasn't expecting it. To be honest, I was expecting to be underwhelmed by the performance, if that's the right word. Like, I know it's an old bike and you've got to take things as you find them, but it really did surprise me. I think maybe because like the wheelbase is so short and it's so agile and exciting, it almost makes you feel like you're on a faster bike than what it should be. But all in all, this does not feel like a 20-year-old bike. I've always wanted to ride a 916 or a 996 or a 998, but you know, I've always been worried deep down that it just wouldn't live up to what I hoped it would be. I almost like tried to avoid it since. But after being fortunate enough to swing my leg over this thing, I think it's probably one of the best bikes I've ever ridden. The feeling of sitting down and just looking at those iconic clocks with, you know, the dodgy bit of foam in the background, and the sound of the clutch, and it's just an amazing iconic bike. And the fact that it rides as well as it does all these years on just blew me away. It's the most surprising bike I've ever ridden in terms of its road riding capabilities. If I could open up my garage and see one of these, I'd be a very happy man. Unfortunately, they're still not cheap. You're looking at about 20 grand plus for one of these still. And to be honest, they're probably only going to go up. So if you ever get the chance, if you ever think about buying one and you can, do it.